Hello and welcome back to Podcasting as Praxis. I'm David. I'm here today with Rob.
Hello.
Jamie.
All right.
Alistair.
Pleased to be on the communist podcast, Podcasting as Praxis tonight.
Yes. And joining us is special guest Dr. Eleanor Janega.
Suppose.
What's happening? Nice to have you back.
I love to be here. I love to be a communist. I love to, for some reason, be allowed to talk about current events, which I have no right doing. But, you know, I'm going to do it anyway.
I mean, to be fair, we don't really have a right, but we keep doing it, and people keep inexplicably giving us money, so they've only brought it on themselves.
That's right.
Also, we seize rights. We don't, nobody has to give you these rights. They are natural to you.
Who's going to stop us?
Yeah, that's right. You and what army? You and what space twinks are going to come and stop me? I'd like to see you try.
That's right. So, let's just kick off straight into the news topic that we've picked up here, and then we'll get into the main topic of the night, which Rob has done, again, probably far too many notes on. So,
there's no such thing as too many notes. I just wanted to point that out to you.
Only you think this. You and Riley think this, that's it. So, first thing I want to talk about is landlords and renting. So, some...
Oh, are they good now?
No. Although some things about it are.
Damn.
It's not a job anymore, Alistair. It's not a job.
Well, we got that out last week, didn't we?
We did, yeah, that's right. No, what I wanted to talk about was some shit that's been happening on the continent. So, you may have heard that in September there was a referendum in Berlin, and the referendum was on basically
whether to leave the EU. Whether to leave the EU. No. Did they have a referendum on something sane?
Put the Daily Mail down, Alistair. Yeah. Just put it down.
Unfortunately, they had a reformation on some real good shit that we don't get to have. So.
Yeah, they came to the conclusion that all corporate landlords, so any large landlord, and these were like really large landlords, should be expropriated effectively.
That's right.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
yes.
It's fucking
That's
great
right.
owns.
Hey, look, expropriation, I would say much kinder than the wall, which was the other option I had on the table. So.
Unfortunately, not an option on the referendum.
A kinder, more gentler Eleanor is on tonight.
Let me write the referendum, you cowards.
Unfortunately, that referendum wasn't legally binding.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Boo.
Just in case.
It did happen just on the cusp of kind of municipal election as well. So we'll see what happens off the back of that, but it could potentially see up to 240,000 properties in Berlin become social housing.
Nice.
So,
okay, nice.
Yeah.
One simply
Some
loves
good
to
shit.
see it. Yeah.
But like I said,
We don't
David,
know
what's going to happen.
What the fuck is good news doing on this podcast?
I know, it's worrying, isn't it?
Yeah, we're not Russell Howard.
Oh, thank Christ. Anyway.
Yeah. No, so the other piece of news I wanted to talk about, something a lot more recent, Spain is now moving forward on rent controls.
Yeah.
2 in a row? That must be a record.
This is like the whole country, by the way. It's not just like Madrid or Barcelona. This is the whole country.
Yes, this is actually coming through national government. The reason for this is that the largest landlord in Spain is now Blackstone, the investment fund.
Oh.
That's our friends from our chat with Nick Bano, David.
Yes, it is. Weird that they would crop up again in such a format. They now own almost 30,000 homes across Spain.
Jesus Christ, 30,000 homes.
How?
This is what we were talking about with Nick. It's like that renting. If you own enough rental houses, you can turn it into a financial asset and like sell off the income stream to different investors. So this is just that, but in Spain instead of London.
Yeah, Madrid sold a load of housing off to Blackstone in the aftermath of the financial crisis to try and make some money back quickly. And obviously the value of those properties has skyrocketed since.
Also, we'd love to see examples of, like, the state selling off, like, a continuous income stream for a short-term benefit. It's just always ends well, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So what's that, is it a different, I assume it's a different government that's like that sold the stuff off versus now like taking it back.
Yeah. So now so basically, it's not just rent controls as well. This also will ban the sale of social housing to investment funds. So it's not quite brilliant. It's not quite like, destroying right to buy or anything, but it stops it going into immediately corporate hands, which is nice.
That means they can only be bought by NHS nurses, right? Poor pensioners and miling class, probably.
Well, first you've got to sell the houses to a grandma, and then you've got, like, you know what I mean? And then she can sell it to an investment firm.
Yes.
And then send you, like, a giant coin in a Christmas card worth, like, millions of pounds or whatever.
Well, the government in Spain is mostly run by PSOE, which is basically the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party, but it's in a coalition agreement with a series of smaller and more left-wing parties who all have parts of the government to run, including the Communist Party of Spain and Podemos.
Because I know in like Portugal, I think it's Portugal, the Communist Party isn't actually communist. It's just like
That's a shame.
So, yeah, I mean,
There's our first
many
problem.
disappointments in terms of like naming of political parties across Europe. But I'm just how communist is the Communist Party of Spain? Is
I'll
my
be
question.
honest, I don't know, but they're closer to communist than the Socialist Workers' Party of Spain anyway. Is the kind of indication that I've taken.
Yeah,
here.
the SWP with like a Spanish accent does not bode well in my in my mind.
El SWP.
What's Spanish for? Would you like to buy a magazine?
¿Quieres comprar una magazina?
What's a Spanish for Comrade Delta?
The fun thing here is that because of this coalition government, next year's budget is contingent on this bill passing. I think that's specifically from Podemos that's putting that through. So in other words, they will collapse the government over this if they don't put it through, which is a prime example of why a small left-wing party with a few seats in government can make a shit ton of difference, so long as it just refuses to melt.
Well, there's your problem.
And therefore, what I think we need is a progressive alliance so we can get electoral reform in the UK.
Ironically, we need, the problems that are kind of caused in the, engineering world, very similar to the ones in the political world. What needs to happen is that things that are supposed to stay strong shouldn't melt. You go. And then that you could just avoid all of this by simply having things not melt. That's all I'm saying.
Again, make it more rigid, yeah. Exactly. The
We love a turgid communist party.
Yeah, this is funnily enough, the government is called the Progressive Alliance. In effect, that's one of the names that people actually do use for it. At least according to the very scant and quick research I did, because I've never actually set foot in Spain. But yeah,
I was going to say, to be fair, like, the fact that literally any of these people in this alliance is prepared to collapse the government over something that is, an unalloyed progressive position is definitely a fucking step in the other direction to what our fucking progressive alliance equivalent would be, which is a bunch of fucking melts who would just collapse immediately towards the right of whatever policy was being debated at any given moment.
Yeah. Anything beyond a 6p plastic bag charge would probably end the Progressive Alliance.
Yeah. Well, if we're going to try and kind of take this back off the good news, let's talk about Britain.
Oh, good. Welcome back to Podcasting as Praxis.
Every day I wake up in Britain. God damn it.
Yeah.
Condolences to all involved.
Yeah. So, I have an article here from The Guardian. It's titled...
That's the second problem. Fuck.
I have to move my bike to get to the fridge. The UK boom in microflats.
Microflats. Fuck
Yeah.
me.
So for Rio Fitzpatrick, a 39-year-old...
Does the Guardian think that the microflats are cool because you can pretend you're Harry Potter?
Probably. The Guardian view on microflats.
Can I put a microbrewery in my microflat, though? This is an important question.
No.
No.
Only if you only.
You need to go and use the Brewdog WeWork instead. That's
Yeah,
what you
I was
need
going to say you can only do that if you use the most annoying marketing possible.
If you want one in your micro flat, it has to be a nano brewery.
Brewing one like pint of beer at a time.
So, for Rio Fitzpatrick, a 39-year-old dubbing mixer for television, home is a tiny studio flat smaller than a standard Premier Inn hotel bedroom. At just 19 square metres...
19?
Yeah, 19. His North London micro flat has a shower and lavatory separated from the main room by a partition without even a separate wash basin.
Fucking F's in the chat for this guy. Damn.
Fuck me.
Oh, no. He loves it.
Sounds cozy.
When I was in uni, my room was, I don't know, 20 square meters, give or take, and but I didn't have a shower inside that room.
Yes.
Christ almighty.
That just sounds inefficient.
I'm so sorry, David.
It's probably a bit odd, people coming in and seeing your bed in the kitchen, but I've just got used to it. He says, my neighbours live in a flat similar to mine, a couple with a 2-year-old kid.
What the
That must
fuck?
be really tough.
No.
Fitzpatrick moved into the studio on the ground floor of an old townhouse converted into 10 flats in May 2018 because he was fed up with living in a house share and liked the area.
Okay.
I mean, living in a house share fucking sucks. Let's just say that out the
Yeah,
gate.
I mean, that's fair enough. I totally feel that. You know, we're all here for getting sick of flatmates eventually. Understandable. He liked the area. Now, I have read ahead on the show notes because I'm a terrible little brown noser. And I know the area he said, and it just pisses me fucking off because you're like, oh, fair enough, homie. You living in town? You living in the city? You enjoying a lovely time in, central London? Is that what's up? Because, okay, I could see it. Maybe you're simply perusing one of the many beautiful pubs that you could enjoy in London. Maybe you're taking a walk through some of the few medieval streets left. No.
So, I have to sleep with earplugs because the boiler is right above my bed and the fridge is also making noises all night.
That's how fridges do.
Yeah, they do be like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just more worried about having the boiler right above your bed because if that's an old boiler, I hope he has a carbon monoxide siren in his room.
Rob, it was recently converted, which to be fair could mean literally anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the same student apartment that I was living in with my mates, at some point the plumber had to come by and he took a look at our boiler and he was like, that was also in somebody's room, and he literally looked at it like, how has nobody died in this room yet? And we're like, I don't know.
I'm just picturing the boiler falling on his bed and crushing him like in Donnie Darko. You know what I mean? Like jet engine going through the ceiling.
Yeah.
We all crave the sweet embrace of the boiler.
Yeah.
Well, the rent is relatively affordable at £900 a month.
Welcome to London, bitch.
Right, yeah.
Welcome to London.
Why not just rent 2 and knock the wall through?
Including gas and electricity, while the rate for a standard one-bed flat in the affluent North London area of Crouch End would cost $1,200.
Fuck off, Crouch End!
Eleanor's just descending into distortion right now.
I can't fucking Crouch End. This MFer spending £900 a month to live in a shoebox in Crouch End. No, I take that back. This motherfucker is not living in a shoebox. This man has internalized bootlicking to such a degree that he has moved inside the boot.
Oh, yes.
That's where he's living.
But, I mean, we are the one podcast, I think, in the UK where none of us come from London, so what the fuck is up with Crouch End and why would we not want to live there?
Crouch End be so far away. So, okay, a friend of the podcast, Justin Hancock, for example, lives in a studio flat, which is, kind of still too expensive because here we are out in fucking London. In the Barbican, right? And I'm allowed to say that. He's mentioned it before. But it makes sense because, he never has to pay for transport because he just walks everywhere. Again, your, heating is included, stuff like that. Crouch End is up in North London, kind of north of Archway and stuff. So you're in zone 3 of, London transport, so that means that your prices go up again. So anytime you need to go anywhere that isn't fucking Crouch End, you're going to be spending so much money because, like, to get...
Oh, fuck me. I just looked it up on Google Maps. Yeah, that's fucking miles
it's
away.
way up. And, like, I mean, this is not, like, yeah, it's North London, I think, is, like, you know, you're stretching it out here. And, like, granted, I'm a kind of, like... My thing is that I ain't paying all this money to live further out than Zone 2. That's, like, what my deal is. Because, like, frankly, if he could, you know, be less of a bootlicker, you could get for around that price, it's still, you know, it would suck, but for around that price, you could probably get some form of not terrible studio down here in Southeast London where everyone else who's broke lives, right? Like, there's a reason why everyone now lives, like, around the kind of, like, Peckham kind of Deptford, you know, New Cross kind of area, and it's because that's what's affordable. And so he's insisting in living in, like, a really bougie place that's way fucking out of London, and, like, anytime, and basically any savings that you would make in living in a shoebox, you're completely pissing up a wall anyway in case you need to get on the tube ever. And, like, fine if you ride your bike everywhere, but Zone 3, riding your bike everywhere is really, really far out. So, like, I live Zone 2 and I ride my bike everywhere and it's fine because I'm in, like, the city in 20 minutes. That's not what's happening for him. So, you know, I'm just saying my man is an idiot. That's all.
He's a Guardian reader. Yeah, that's essentially...
That's prime Guardian country up there.
Oh, yeah.
What can I say? Like, extremely.
Okay, I felt bad for him first, but now he's just a chump.
Yeah.
So, remembering that this is a 19 square metre flat, the government recommended a minimum space standard of 37 square metres in 2015, but it's not mandatory.
Oh,
no,
okay.
of course it's not.
It's like more of a vibe, you know?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, space government, we love it. So
there's a minimum level of feng shui you need to have, but size, no, definitely not.
Can't go telling people what to do and how to behave. That's not the government's job.
Well, yeah,
exactly.
And this stuff gets really gross as well here in London around student accommodation a lot of the time because they'll make things that would be considered unlivable even in a disgusting shoebox like this dude is living in. They will make it legal for student accommodation because they'll go, oh, well, kids don't live there all the time. So it'll be like windows that can't open or that are blocked. And it's also
because students are basically subhuman. I mean,
exactly.
we all know it.
This country just hates young people, you know.
Oh,
and, like,
it is, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, tangent. Sorry about that.
It's some good shit. No, it's fine.
Yeah, it's like that fucking thing they're going to build at the university in LA, where like the rooms don't have windows.
The cube. Yep.
The giant tomb for some billionaire who's going to, like, do you know what I mean? Get all the students in there and then gas them all so they join him in the afterlife as his servants or something. I assume.
This is the tungsten apartment cube or something.
So back to this hell. The 37 square metre, like I was saying, the standard isn't mandatory. Councils are now allowed to do some sort of kind
I'm
of...
just picturing if they made that, like, 37 square metres mandatory, everyone's ceiling would be like 2 foot off the ground suddenly.
Yeah.
You would all be living in somebody's crawl space. I mean, that is where Britain belongs.
You only specified 2 dimensions, not 3, you fools.
If you want an indication of how widespread this is at the moment, between 2011 and 2021, as many as 1 in 15 flats in London alone fell below the national minimum standard of 37 square metres.
But, David, I don't understand this. I thought the UK's great councils and London's councils, known for their probity and their care for their residents, would certainly look after this.
I mean, have you ever seen a fucking British councillor?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes. But how can we call this a minimum standard if it's not a standard?
Yeah.
It's a recommendation. Yeah, it's a recommendation. Like, fucking, please don't do this. It is too small. No, I'm going to do it anyway. On your way then.
I mean,
we
call Great Britain great, so I don't see what the problem is. You know what I mean?
We also actually have to mean things.
I think on this, you really have to go, it's like full Flight of the Conchords. I'm going to do it anyway. It's like, but I'm going to do it anyway. Shout out to the most beautiful girl in the room. That's right. I've updated none of my references since 2007, and I never will.
The Germans have the right idea. They call this place Gross Britannian, so, you know.
True.
Well, Barratt, as in Barratt Homes,
great.
have recently become the first major house builder to launch pocket-sized apartments in Harrow,
That's not a thing.
Northwest London.
It's not a thing.
Wait for it, branded Smirt Homes.
Excuse me? Homer Simpson, is that fucking you?
SMRT
Homes. It is selling 123 apartments off-plan at the former Kodak factory in Eastman Village, mainly one-bed flats with larger two-bed ones also available. Designed with built-in cupboards and wardrobes, slimmer kitchen worktops.
Yeah, I bet they
Oh
are.
my god.
Shelves.
You guys, I bet you fucking love galley kitchens, don't you motherfuckers? Well, get a load of this shit. And it's like a fucking galley kitchen, but you have to like move each side in and out of the wall in order to get like
Oh yeah, fold down
all your
worktop,
shit
yeah.
out.
Yeah, if you want to like chop a salad or something, you have to, I don't know, make the bed and put a piece of wood on it or something first.
Well, good news here. The one-bed flats measure about 37 square metres.
Cool.
Doing some amount of lifting there, which, as we know, is the minimum standard. Great, fine, done, sorted. Joseph Antianazzi, that name rings a bell for some reason. I can't place why. Senior sales manager at Barratt London says they are aimed at the Instagram generation, young people who commute into London.
What the fuck does that mean?
In the first place, no young people commute into London. Like, it just... fuck off. We all live here. And I'm not even young people. And in the second place with that, it's like... You get that no one has to commute anymore, right? Like, you get that the old world is dying, you know, the new one is struggling to be born, and this is the time of monsters, which is why you're selling...
This is the time of smirt apartments.
And that's why you're selling these terrible smirt apartments. That's one of the monsters. I believe that it's referred to in the Book of Revelation. You know, like, it's before the lashing tail of the dragon, it brings down the smirt.
I just want to say, as someone, a formerly young person, as of yesterday when I turned 30, I did in fact commute into London for like a year or so, and I want to punch this man in the face.
Yep.
Are you not part of the Instagram generation then, Alistair?
I've literally never logged into Instagram.
I will never log into Instagram, he says.
I will never log onto Instagram.
I really hate it when my smirt apartment has no room for my pale horse.
So, I mean, this has all sounded quite out of character for this podcast, because this has all been very London-centric. Good news, though. If the houses take off, Barratt plans to roll them out across the UK.
Woo!
Okay.
Yeah. A buyer taking advantage of the government's Help to Buy programme, which runs until March 2023, would need to earn about £40,000 a year to buy a one-bed flat.
So
Good.
that's like, give or take
Great.
£1,000 per square metre.
And the rest of us can just live in skips, I guess.
Have you seen the rent on those things? It's outrageous.
Probably, yeah. Steal a skip and live in it, yeah.
Have you tried Instagramming your skip, though?
They would suit... So, bear in mind, this reads like fucking ad copy already, but it goes on. They would suit a single person, or perhaps a couple, quote, if you really like the person, says Neil Hudson, housing analyst.
But yeah, just top it into this fucking coffin-sized room with your partner, and I'm sure nothing problematic will occur in the ensuing
Unfortunately,
few years.
in order to get more than one person in this room, you have to be penetrating each other in several ways at all times. So it's really more of a lifestyle choice.
The most annoying one of those is nose in mouth.
These smart apartments would perhaps suit a single person or perhaps a conjoined twin.
What's so smirt about these apartments, though, anyway?
They left the A out.
They have a website or
Can
some
you, like,
shit.
unlock them with your phone or something?
Yeah.
You have to do
Probably.
quests before you can unlock the shelf or the oven.
He goes on to say, there will be demand for this, and it's got to be attractive to first-time
There
buyers.
will be demand for this.
Yeah.
We will make you demand these things.
There are a lot of people who'd rather have a micro flat than live in a shared house.
Nope.
The problems are bad, but the causes are very good.
Do you know what a lot of people would rather live in than a fucking shared house? A regular-sized flat.
Yeah. They just want...
Crazy fucking idea.
Yeah, but you can't put those on Instagram, Alistair. Jesus Christ, I mean...
Oh yeah, it won't fit in the fucking picture, will it?
So back to the flats. The flats in Harrow start at £285,000, which sounds terrible, but when you consider that it's cheaper than the average 322,000, or even like the Greater London cost of 510,000. It's not bad. That's a good deal.
Look,
That's a really good deal.
Look, I just want to, at this point, I've waited until the end. I want to tell you guys a little story. Do you know SMRT is a word in Czech? Smrt. Would you like to know what smrt means in Czech?
I would love to know.
Death.
Oh,
So there you
that
go.
is
No,
beautiful.
no Czechs were, asked to comment on what shall we name? What shall we name this house? Oh, I was thinking death. Like, great, but yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be really nice. Like, you pick up somebody in a pub and it's like, do you want to come with me to my pre-coffin? That's just
Exactly.
going to be great.
It's good. It's good shit,
I mean, that's where the savings come from, because you don't have to buy a coffin afterwards.
There you go. Just bury me in my golden, tiny little coffin box.
Again, like, I think this is like that cube thing we were just talking about. Everybody who lives in these things is just going to be a slave in the afterlife to shareholders of Barratt Homes. I think that's how this is going to work out.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, they won't, because they don't expect people to buy these and then live in them.
Are they expected to be buy-to-let? Because that would be my answer.
They say that the micro homes should be for rent rather than for sale, as they are very much designed for a short period of someone's life.
Yeah, I fucking bet they are.
Yeah, and the guy here is concerned that people end up being stuck in this, possibly even with a family. It would be better, he says, to buy a home that you can live in for a long period so you can ride out any boom and bust. Simple.
If I needed to live in a permanent home, I would simply buy a £500,000 house.
Yeah, why don't you just do that, Alistair? Jesus Christ.
Should have thought of that before now.
I'm reminded of that episode we did with We Don't Talk About the Weather, when we talked about Sean Bailey's campaign, and he said, yeah, the way the homeless can get off the streets is to save for an apartment.
I hate everyone in the world.
Same.
You're on the right podcast, Eleanor.
I love it that this is just like, right, the answer to this is just make the apartments smaller and cram people in there like fucking sardines and not,
Guillotines.
do what Spain is doing or do what, Berlin is doing and just like wipe out the landlord class because they are parasites.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble.
With guillotines.
I mean, the trouble is, I think specifically in the UK, one of the issues that we have is that landlordism goes back so far in our history generally because we never had a proper revolution. We never got rid of the monarchy. So really, land ownership is still concentrated in the same, hands of the noble class as it ever has been. And landlordism is conceived of as absolutely, we kind of have like landlord realism. It's easier to imagine the end of the world.
That's the most depressing thing I've heard all day, landlord realism.
But I mean, this is where we're at, right? And, you see it with like the freehold and the leasehold systems here. No other country has that. It's just us. And it's absolutely bizarre, and it's why you see things like these tiny little rabbit hutches being sold, and it's why you see things like them refusing to get a bill through Parliament that would make you have to have your house be livable before you rented it out. They're the group of people who have power in this country. Their power is still tied specifically to controlling land, and it has ever been so. So, not to get too medieval.
And that's why we can't change it.
Nope. Because it turns out things are good if they've been happening for a long time. Yeah.
I mean, landlord. First there was a landlord, and then there was the land, and then there was the house that was built on the land, and that's just the circle of life.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So I think that'll probably do us here for the housing section of this. But talking about fucked up land ownership and all of the other fun attachments to it, Rob, you wanted to talk about farming tonight.
I did want to talk about farming. I've wanted to talk about farming for a while.
Fuck yeah.
And, Eleanor, this is why I dragged you on, because I know your love of all things land and peasant related. So I thought we would talk about the UK's...
I'm shocked that we moved off the news without talking about how deed the Queen is for once.
I mean, she did right, though.
Are we growing as people?
Like, I really wanted her to make it till June, though, because I wanted them.
Yes, bank holiday, then she can, like, do whatever she likes.
And then if she dies after that, that'll be sweet, because they'll probably give us a day off for her dying, too. So that'd be good. You know.
I'm supposed to get 2 days off, actually. You get one when she dies, and then another one for the funeral.
Yeah, I'll be fucking crying into my pint.
The pubs will be shut out of respect. It's going to be hell.
Wasn't she supposed to, like, rock up to the cenotaph or something last week?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she sprained her back, and then not long after that, they said, right, she's not doing anything for the rest of the year.
Probably all the athletic sex she's been having in her new single period.
I really am just looking forward to the day that it is officially confirmed that the Queen is dead, and David just picks up the big red phone that he's got in his flat and just calls all of us at the same time for the emergency, raucous laughter episode that we're going to be recording.
I've already had to schedule this in with my partner and say, at some point, I am going to just get up and leave. You need to deal with it when it happens.
David receives a phone call at 2 a.m. and just disappears into the night.
Yeah. I mean, first they call the cabinet office, and then they call David to say London Bridge is down because of the emergency podcast system.
David, we're going to record this fucking episode before the fucking flag gets raised.
I'm picturing that scene from the start of Chernobyl where the guy gets the phone call in the middle of the night and he's like, "What? No, if I'm up, they're up." You know what I mean?
Anyway, let's talk about some farming now that we've done the mandatory speak about the Queen bit.
Peasants.
I want to talk about it because this is another one of these sort of structural changes that's going on in the UK right now that nobody ever seems to really talk about. And I hope Eleanor, I'm going to do my best to make it somewhat less depressing than the fishing thing I dragged you on to last time.
I love being brought on to the peasant and Magna Carta podcasts, respectively. That's fine with me.
If you play this podcast outside of your shop, you don't have to obey COVID regulations.
That's right.
That's exactly, yeah. This is the one podcast with fringes on it. What with all the shortages and the supply chain issues and the pigs being killed on the farm and stuff, I thought we should talk a little bit about farming in the UK. And the reason I want to do that is because at the end of last year, mostly without pretty much any of the major papers really talking about it, the new UK Farm Bill passed into law, and that's the thing that's going to replace the Common Agricultural Policy that obviously the UK is no longer part of because that was part of the European Union. So I thought for the rest of the episode, we should look a little bit about some of the structural issues facing UK farming, some of the issues around farm labour as well, and how the new Farm Bill essentially is aimed at making things better. But the question is it, of course, going to? And spoiler alert, probably it's not going to do any of those things.
That's right.
So first, before we start talking about the new stuff, a little bit of a quick overview, or as quick as I can be, which is never quick, so just settle in, pour yourself a drink, to talk about some of the structural problems with farming in the UK that have really existed for a very long time as is. The first thing is you have to realize that agriculture, much like fishing, is an incredibly small percentage of the UK industry, of the UK GDP. It hovers about 0.6%, depending on which year. But the critical thing is it makes up 70% of the landscape of the United Kingdom is farmed, which makes it incredibly important for bigger societal goals. Food, of course, first, soil maintenance, climate, biodiversity, being able to go outside for a walk, all that jazz. It really is quite important. The second thing is farming is farmers are rich in terms of that the land they have, if they own it, is quite valuable, but they're very cash poor. Average farm income, but really split up between different sectors, is between £40,000 and £50,000 per year.
But they're allowed to shoot your dog, so it balances out.
Oh, that's fine then.
They also have a license to murder badgers, but that's a different story again. However, that 40 to 50k a year is average farm income, and I'm thinking that's probably like before taxes, before depreciation, all that stuff, and just put it in.
I assume that they all get issued kimonos then.
Definitely, but like just to put it a little bit into context, if you're a farmer on like a reasonably sized farm and you want to buy a top of the line large tractor, depending a bit on the specialization and the stuff you add onto it, it can cost up to £100,000. So easily like double your farm income. That's before you've paid yourself a salary and anything along that line.
But you've got to appreciate that tractor will last you at least 18 months before, like, you know, you need to pay for a firmware update or some shit.
Yeah. Well, if it's a John Deere tractor, you may be locked into very specific maintenance contracts where if you decide to fix anything like on your own just with a spanner, that would void the entire warranty of the tractor because you have to bring it into a John Deere approved shop. So, you know, that's kind of a thing that
I fucking love a racket.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the real cyberpunk future. Is like, do you know what I mean? Like unlicensed mechanics, just like fixing your fucking tractor or whatever.
Oh God!
Have to get the local net runner in to hack the fucking mainframe on your combine harvester.
It's like Brazil, right? When Tuttle, the guy comes in and fixes your aircon for you. Yeah. And you end up getting tortured.
But this is, of course, I'm talking about farmers. If you're a farm worker, life is significantly shittier. The average income for a farm worker is about £21,000 a year, which averages out to about £1,700 a month, or 450 quid a week for these are numbers from the FT, which for incredibly hard back-breaking labor. That's especially relevant.
Pre-tax.
Yes. Yes, that's pre-tax, that's pre-everything. So that's just your gross income. And one of the most important things in terms of farm labor that happened over the last couple of years is the things that are labor intensive. You have to think like fruit and veg stuff that needs to get physically picked by a person off the field. It's not like wheat threshing and that kind of stuff. That's all been automated. And the important thing is, it used to be up until the 70s or 80s, I can't remember, that used to be just like you'd get a flat hourly rate. As long as you picked reasonably, like you would just be fine. But now that's been shifted to what's known as a pick rate, i.e. you only get paid the minimum wage if you pick a certain number of kilograms or whatever per hour.
I fucking love a KPI.
Well, I think that this is a really important thing to focus on too, because, you know, there was that slew of articles a couple weeks ago being like, why aren't more Britons picking vegetables? You get paid up to 30 quid an hour. And it's like, you get paid 30 quid an hour if you are one of the best in the game at doing broccoli crowns, you know, all of the tricks of the trade, and you are just on a level that none of us ever understand. And it takes years upon years to get skilled enough to do that. And it's like, you don't get paid 30 quid for toddling down there like, you know, that idiot from the Telegraph or whatever it was did. It just does my head in, you know. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just mad about it.
No, you're completely right.
I was going to say, this kind of all falls under the guise of this all being like, you know, unskilled labor, when it's obviously like incredibly skilled, like as you say, like years and years of backbreaking work to be able to achieve like the top rate of 30 quid an hour, which is on its face a reasonable amount of pay, but when you consider the amount of fucking skills that you need to learn, it's the same as the fucking like, you know, HGV drivers. It's the exact same thing.
Exactly. It's exactly the same thing. And the way, of course, that we did it before Brexit was we would just import a load of farm workers every year for seasonal labor, mainly from Eastern Europe. And then we would demonize them while they were here because they wouldn't integrate into the community, quote unquote. And then we would kick them out at the end of the season, house them in leaky caravans. And then they would go home because they would earn more than the minimum income in Poland. You know, not that that's a great thing to brag about.
Just British things.
Yeah. And Alan, it's good that you brought it up because, like, if you remember last year as well, there was this campaign called Pick for Britain to recruit British farm workers. You remember that story?
And no, I shan't. How about that?
I mean, that was a complete failure for many reasons, but the FT had some good numbers on it. In the end, they only had 15,000 applicants, of which only 450 were placed on an actual farm job. So they started the season on a farm. Of those 450, less than 18 still was doing the job at the end of the farm season.
A resounding campaign success.
Yeah. I don't know how much was paid for that.
We just need to go forward with that Tory lad's idea that, like, you know, prisoners and the homeless and welfare claimants should all have to pick fruit.
Yeah, I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if, like, chain gang labor came back to, like, sort some of this shit out. And essentially, this comes to the heart of a very fundamental problem.
We love to see capitalism going back to its fucking roots, don't we?
Yeah. One of the very fundamental problems that's inherent certainly in modern farming, it's in the UK, but it's essentially everywhere, is people and certainly the political system want food to be as cheap as possible, because cheap food means people aren't hungry, which means they don't riot. Of course, farmers, on the other hand, want higher prices because they want a good income and a future for their farm and their business. And that contradiction has never been resolved and has certainly gotten worse because of, you know, unhinged capitalism, certainly in the form of, like, supermarket price wars. You know, Tesco and Lidl and Aldi are, like, fighting it out every time to, like, make the chicken cheaper or make the potatoes cheaper or whatever. And, like, I'm glad that people can eat for a low price, right? I'm very glad for that. But you do have to factor in that, like, if your whole chicken costs, like, a quid or two, that chicken's been raised, transported, plucked, butchered, transported again, put into your supermarket. So, like, imagine the margins that farming operates on. And that's really, like, a very core problem facing the UK farm industry. Another big problem is like, farming is old because, as you can imagine, like we've been talking about, no young person in their right mind wants to get into farming. Like, why would you, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's because we're all busy on the Instagram, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone wants to be influencer. Kids these days care more for Instagram influence than repairing farmyard fence.
Damn.
Damn. But I mean, also there are good reasons for it. You know, one of the things about being a farmer is that it is one of the professions that has the highest suicide rate of any other profession, because it's absolutely backbreaking and it's constant. Like, you can never stop working.
You can essentially never take a break. That's really part of farm life. It really is 24/7. And one of the things that, of course, has happened as a result of all of these factors coming together is that certainly the smaller farm in the UK is disappearing quite rapidly. 35% of all farms disappeared between 2005 and 2016, according to the FT. It's really hard to find, like, good numbers because it depends on how you define what is a farm and stuff. But there are between 100,000 and 120,000 full-time farmers left in the UK. That would be my guess. It may be a bit more, but it's not that much more than that, I would say. So that makes it also an incredibly small constituency that, of course, finds it really difficult to have a political voice, because literally there's not enough. Like, even if you put all the farmers together in, like, one constituency, maybe they will be able to outweigh the rest of the population, but maybe not. Like, if they're in the same constituency as a reasonable-sized city, they would still be vastly outnumbered by city dwellers.
Have they ever considered collectivizing maybe the farms?
Once again, I don't want to do another fishing episode, but thank you to the European Union, because under European Union anti-cartel laws, essentially, farmers were not allowed to band together and set prices collectively, because that would be cartel forming. So farmers would, by law, have to negotiate one-on-one with Tesco buyers, essentially. And you can imagine how well that goes.
Right. Yeah, it's a really difficult one, because it I think, wage suppression and stagnation in this country is such that, one of the only reasons we're kind of able to enjoy the fairly all right lifestyle that a lot of us are. I mean, I'm from America, so, obviously.
The treats.
Yeah,
it's the treats. Yeah.
Is that the treats are inexpensive. So, we can go to the grocery store and a pound goes a fairly long way, all things considered. And if you take that off the menu, then where the fuck are we,
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, like, if you want to, and we'll get into like what the solutions are and stuff in a little bit, but like in my mind, if you want to keep like a viable farm system that looks after the environment and all that stuff, you would probably need to at least double the price of food. And the only way you're going to ever be able to do that is if you double the minimum wage at the same time. So like the percentage spent on food on your income stay the same, but then, you have to double the minimum wage. And, how likely is that, essentially?
Sounds good. Let's do
it. I mean, yeah, I'm all for it, but, it's not easy. And it is going to get harder.
You could balance that if you doubled the minimum wage but killed half of the workers.
Christ.
So another pandemic.
Killing the pool.
Just put it in there. See how it goes.
Yeah.
A modest proposal.
I'm just looking ahead for the next like inevitable Tory Lib Dem coalition. Kill half of all workers in exchange for another 10p on plastic bags.
Kill a tenth of all workers, but you don't have to get a visa to go skiing.
So, I mean, like, apart from a certain, unless we do like full-on Malthusian answers to these kinds of problems, there is like this stuff is really structural, and it's very slow moving. But like we've seen recently, we talked about it on previous podcasts, like the stuff where all of a sudden was short on slaughterhouse workers and vets, so 120,000 pigs have to like get culled. All of this is like very much interrelated with what's going on in the farming industry and in the farms itself. The things that makes it worse is, of course, politics, because certainly our politics makes everything worse. And specifically what makes it a lot worse is DEFRA, the government ministry responsible for farming and the environment.
It feels like every time we ever mention DEFRA on this podcast, it's just good things ensue, well managed like policy across like whatever the subject matter is.
Aren't they just like the Ministry for bolt guns?
Yeah.
Every time I ever hear about them, it's because they're out like fucking massacring some strain of beast.
That's right. Shout out to Geronimo.
Yeah, just like, we've had enough of the fucking alpacas this
Morning
week.
till I join you, my homie. Love you, Geronimo.
I mean, I've certainly on this podcast shit a number of times on DEFRA, and that's for good reasons. To prepare for this podcast, I talked to a friend of mine who's been working in UK ag politics for a really long time, and they said like the DEFRA has no institutional knowledge, no real knowledge of the farming industry, not enough experienced staff. Any good staff is immediately moved around to different ministries, and that means that the people they do listen to tend to be the big ag industry and other players that may not always have.
Oh, I get it. It's the exact same approach that the media takes to like reporting. It's like you don't put people in like the top positions because they know anything. You put them in the positions because they'll just take a fucking press release, read it verbatim, and then move on to the next thing. And so just substitute fucking a press release for whatever big agricultural interests want, and it's interchangeable. Excellent. We love the neoliberal economic model.
Yeah, I mean the way you can really see it is just to look at who's been in charge of DEFRA for the last decade. So this is in a row. It was Owen Paterson, you may remember from last week's episode. Then it was Liz Truss, she of the famous cheese speech. This was when she was DEFRA secretary, by the way.
No, let's also not forget pork markets.
Pork markets as well, yeah. Then it was Andrea Leadsom, also another great intellectual talent.
This is just a fucking cavalcade of genius right here, isn't it?
Then it was Michael Gove, who, from everything I heard about, what is weirdly interested in farming and like the landscape as a broader thing, but it's still Michael Gove, so
So get fucked.
Yeah, he's very interested in landscapes, mountains, and madness, etc.
Michael Gove did a very good job at DEFRA for Michael Gove.
yeah.
I mean, and really, isn't that
thing
all
with
it
DEFRA
was?
as well. Didn't DEFRA only like surface in like the early 2000s as well? Wasn't
It did, yeah. It was before you had a
it's basically our version of the Department for Homeland Security. They just like sprouted up in response to 9/11. Which is it's like fortunate really, because imagine if we'd had DEFRA as far back as the 80s and they were like having to go out and like murder Bernie Clifton's ostrich or something like that.
If you think about it, BSE was the British 9/11.
I think that's not a bad way of putting it, actually. Then it was Teresa Villiers, who is also fucking wild incompetent, and now it's George Eustace, who's also just not. He's just not.
I've never heard of those last two fuckers.
Yeah.
Making waves.
But this is kind of the point of like DEFRA. Like DEFRA is either like where you put somebody who needs to be put in a bigger job later because they're like relevant to some part of the Tory constituency, or when you've run out of those people, you just put in a numpty. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, but I mean, those last two are total no marks. It's a real downstep from Michael Gove. It's like later Van Halen tours. Do you know what I mean? When they just don't have enough of the original lineup for you to care.
Was Villiers there before or after she was like Northern Ireland secretary? Because that's another fucking no mark job that they just need to fill.
Wasn't she the one who gave an interview about Northern Ireland and said, "I can't believe people vote along factional lines here. I didn't know that before I took this job."
That sounds familiar, yes.
I think that was her.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Fucking hell.
So essentially, in response to these many big structural problems we've been talking about, we have now the UK Farm Bill, and that's meant to replace the EU's Common Agricultural Policy with all its attendant rules and regulations, as well as its payment systems. Because if you don't know, I think in the UK, the Common Agricultural Policy paid for, depending on which sector you're in, between 30 and 60% of farm income came directly from European farm subsidies.
Yeah.
So the one thing, that's the big thing we still don't know, is what the budget will be for the Farm Bill when it comes into full effect. We have no idea whether or not it will...
probably.
Yes, that's the very best.
The farmers did their fucking patriotic duty by voting for Brexit. They can get fucked if they think they're getting handouts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, Eleanor, I didn't want to bring you back on the fishing episodes, but these are some familiar themes.
It's just like completely. What if we did it for farms?
Yeah.
Right.
So the budget is fixed at what we got from Europe before for this Parliament. Mm-hmm. In the next Parliament, it's question mark.
I've just reminded myself of the eel paperwork guy, and I can't stop smiling. Do you know what I mean? The phrase "eel paperwork" just brings me joy. Do you know what I mean?
So, a friend of mine, kind of like right after the referendum, was hiking up in Northumbria, and she was staying on a farm, and it was kind of like you kind of ate with the family or whatever thing, and they all kind of sat down to dinner.
Yeah.
And the wife was like, "Right, how did everyone vote in the referendum? We voted Brexit." And they were all kind of like, "Oh, word," like being polite. And she was like, "Yeah, because right now the EU, they subsidize us to keep some of our fields like naturalized or whatever, and instead we could be using them profitably in all these other ways." And my mate was like, "Couldn't you just do that if you felt like it?" I don't get it. Like, the EU isn't forcing you to take those subsidies. And now it's like, whoo, like, I'm just saying, I very much thought about this when reading the FT today.
I don't know. Are you expecting someone to say no to money?
I mean, well,
it's impossible. It literally cannot be done.
I I personally would simply take this money and have a nice field. Thanks very much. Like, I don't understand what the problem is here, but apparently there was one, and I think it has something to do with nationalism. But,
Also, a pathology of this country is the need to complain about something, even if it's something that is actually beneficial to you.
No, it's not even just that. They weren't even thinking about it being beneficial to them. It's there are other farmers who are getting free money and not putting in real work. That's what it is. It's other people are getting free shit and they shouldn't be. Even if they're also getting the free shit, they just won't think of it as the same thing. It's the British disease.
I mean, if you really want me to drag this into like a 5-hour episode, I can do a whole line about what's wrong with the Common Agriculture Policy and why British farmers had some point when they said we're sick of Europe and the way they interfere with our farming systems. But I think
I feel like, Rob, I think you'll find that we said we're sick of Europe, so we shan't be doing that.
Exactly.
I voted Brexit to save you all from that episode.
To be absolutely clear, I don't think anyone on this podcast would say that Europe is perfect by any fucking stretch.
No.
Yeah. So essentially, the biggest shift is under the European Union system, you would get a certain fixed amount of money per hectare. So just the more land you had, the more money you got, up to a certain ceiling, but you could get around that ceiling quite easily if you wanted to. That's a very brief summary. The new way this is going to work is you're no longer going to get paid by the hectare or by the acre, but for performance. And by performance,
farm KPIs. Farm KPIs.
Yes, exactly.
Are they going to gamify farming? Is that what this is?
It's called Farmville, Jamie. Keep up.
I'm not going to tell you again to get off my fucking lawn, mate. Do you know what I mean?
So essentially, they're going to measure farmers' performance, and when air and water quality improves, there's more wildlife, the soil is better, there's less erosion, there's better flood management, all that stuff. Like, if you do more of that, you get more money, but we don't know what the budget is, so we don't know whether or not it's actually worth it to do more, or rather to just let your land go.
Have they considered paying everyone in like a cryptocurrency? And then they don't need to have it because it's just fictional. Do you know what I mean? You could get Mario coins, right? Maybe if you buy Mario to drive your tractor, your farm will perform better than every other farm.
Think of all the mushrooms.
So essentially, that's like one angle of it. Is it's a pay for certainly environmental performance under like a broader theory that's in the environmental farm world, which is called public money for public goods, i.e., you only get taxpayer money, or if you're an MMT,
do you know what? I see where this is gonna end up. They're gonna get like fucking some dipshit and put them in charge of DEFRA, and then the future's gonna be cyber farming. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can't find enough people, British or otherwise, to pick the turnips. So we're gonna get one of those dogs with a fucking railgun mounted on it. You know, the like robot dogs.
What do you say?
And it's just gonna shoot the turnips out of the fucking ground. You know what I mean?
Cyber farming just sounds to me like some kind of weird internet perversion. Sorry, that's just.
It would be a very British thing if our Skynet started with like the farm robots revolting, like a Wat Tyler, but. A cyber Wat Tyler, if you will.
Okay, well, now I'm
What
in.
Cyber? So the other thing is, like the other tangent is, apart from the environmental stuff, is to what they call improving farm prosperity. So this is helping farmers like become more efficient and like invest in, I don't know, bigger warehouses, more efficient waste removal, that kind of stuff. So that they can be more efficient actors in the market where they're supposed to be earning their real money. So
that is like a whole load of horse shit. Because we've had a lot of experience of this on this show, of people just inserting the word efficiency without just, defining any of their terms.
I'm betting someone involved in the like drafting of this bill has a mate that sells efficiency to farms. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, we'll get into how that is going in a little bit, because this is the idea is, and I'll read you from the government's document called "The Path to Sustainable Farming." one of the top line goals is by 2028, all UK farmers will be running sustainable businesses that do not rely on public subsidies.
We expect many of you to be out of business by 2028.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yes. Well, I mean, they're setting up for that as well. And again, I don't want to call back to the fishing episode, but if you remember what they did with fishing in the 80s, which was to offer people money to stop fishing and essentially buy the boat and shelve it, they're introducing the exact same thing for farming right now. There's going to be a voluntary one-off retirement payment for farmers that want to get out, up to £100,000. Which is essentially a lump sum of all outstanding payments based on the EU system, until the age of 65 or however long it's supposed to run. But it would cap out at approximately £50,000 for the average farmer, according to the FT. So, like, you would just get like a one-off payment of £50,000 to quit the farm life and then, I don't know, retire on that. I have no idea how that
retrain in
will
cyber, obviously.
Yeah, become a ballerina, a cyber ballerina. Something similar like this, by the way, was done in New Zealand like a decade ago or something. Which
I'm going to guess it was done like slightly like better than the British version.
No, it was an extremely brutal thing where they just literally turned off the taps on the subsidies from day one to day two.
We haven't seen the British version yet, so
yeah. Essentially, what ended up happening, again, much like fishing, is that most of the smaller farmers ended up leaving the field, and a few players that were left became incredibly huge and monolithic instead. Think James Dyson, who now owns a 3,000 hectare farm somewhere in the UK. I can't remember where.
Excellent.
Can that cunt not just invent a Hoover that picks up turnips? You know what I mean? Like, physician, heal thyself.
So that's the glorious future. And what we're in right now is the transition period, which is itself comprised of two bits. The first is where we move slowly out of, certainly in terms of money, out of the basic payment system per hectare that you got from Europe and into this new system of payment for environmental performance, some subsidies for building a bigger barn, some bits and bobs on top of that. But again, quoting from my friend from the UK farming industry, we're still waiting on DEFRA to make some fucking decisions. So, like, there's supposed to be all these small steps that are being done in the way, but they're not really being done in the way. DEFRA's not making any big decisions where this thing is supposed to go to get to the goals that you were intending. And
are you saying that? This
they're very busy people. They've got foxes to bolt gun. You know what I mean?
Rob, are you saying that this government that famously doesn't like to do anything unless it absolutely fucking has to, or if it's just completely in their own self-interest to do something, they're not taking this like problem head on? They're just waiting for something?
But I mean, what they are doing, and I'm going to say that this is, in general, is not a bad idea if you have to like invent farm policy out of whole cloth, is they're running like over 1,000 pilot schemes on different farms to like see if we pay for X instead of Y, or we do A instead of B. Does it work? Does it work for the farmers? Do we get the performance? So they're running like this huge amount of different trials and schemes to see what works before they roll it out as a national policy. So for me, like, that in and of itself is not a bad idea to design something.
Feels like that might have been a good idea to do something like that before we actually finished leaving the EU, but
they would probably have to be
just
wise.
Me.
Well, stop talking Britain down.
Yeah, come on now.
We've had enough of experts. We've had enough of, like, sense.
We've had enough of eating enough.
What about an idiot with a microphone?
There's a time to act and a time to think, and this is no time to think.
This is a time to do neither, I think you'll find.
Yeah. Just easier that way. It's efficient.
So the idea is that because we're transitioning out of the European-style payment schemes and into this environment scheme stuff, these schemes should start paying farmers by 2023, but from everything I've heard and read about, most of those schemes are nowhere near ready and will probably not be ready by 2023.
Have they considered using an app? to speed things up. You know what I mean? Like Fiverr, but for root vegetables. You know what I mean? That sort of thing.
Tuber, but without the E.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the meantime, while we're still like figuring out the baby steps to get to the sunlit uplands of the new farm policy, the basic payments, so like the money that the farmers are getting, are already being cut by like 15%, 20% or more every year. These cuts are like cumulative. So from last year to 2027, the basic payments, like the actual subsidies that actual farmers actually get, are being cut literally to just about zero by the end of 2027. But by 2024, the new scheme should like kick in, so farmers can like seamlessly transition from A into B, and you know it doesn't become
seamlessly. You say
clusterfuck. Yes,
seamlessly.
Well,
with no problems.
I love to treat money like fucking methadone.
Yes. So just to give you an idea, what in terms of the environmental stuff, what's happening like right now before all these magical new schemes are supposed to kick in,
is everything on fire?
Well, I mean, we're creating the conditions to set everything on fire.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Well, it's a good job. There's nothing's on fire then.
That's what I expect when I hear the word hear the word environmental these days. Do you know what I mean?
So under the old EU system, there was a thing called cross compliance that said if you're not adhering to like basic standards of good practices and not dumping sewage into the water, then you get a penalty on your subsidy.
Is that shit going right in the bin?
So what we've done this year, or in 2020, I can't remember, alone, is to cut the link between the demands on performance and the payments you get.
Yeah.
And instead of doing that, which was seen by UK farmers and certainly by UK farm lobbyists as gross penalties, that
was
you would get.
Was it nothing short of communism?
Yeah. So what we've used to replace that system of penalties, which to be fair didn't work great in the first place, is and I'm quoting again from the Path to Sustainable Farming.
Is the quote you're about to read out? Do what you fucking want. Do you know what I mean? Is it that?
Near enough. It is the British government will do better communication.
Oh, good.
Well, I'm glad this is just all a communications issue and not like a material or structural issue that's been essentially having to be dealt with now that we've decided to just completely upheave like our entire like political process by leaving the EU.
What counts as better communication? Is it like a proprietary email system that all farmers need to sign up to so that they can
megaphone.
Just not log on and get their emails?
It's Alistair's Tuber app, I think.
Why is that app Alistair's? I was the one that came up with
I named it.
Oh, so it's just like Facebook all over again, is it? Have I been fucking gazumped out of my own invention?
Correct.
Fucking Instagram generation, man.
So yeah, like with all this stuff, like the headline goals, as long as you don't dig too deep, it sounds like not a bad idea. And for most of the coverage that I've read, certainly in The Guardian and the FT, like the FT does a better job because the FT always does a better job, but like none of this is really examined in like really great detail. And one of the key things that's like going to fuck over a lot of farmers is what we're already doing right now, which is trade agreements. We've already signed or are about to sign with New Zealand and Australia right now. And that means essentially we are giving them nearly full access to like export their goods. And then you have to think specifically of stuff like lamb in exchange for the UK financial services moving in to Canberra and Auckland. It's that kind of deal. Of course, like, but they live... Sorry, let me try that again. Of course, New Zealand and Australian farmers have very different and I would say somewhat lower standards when it comes to environmental and climate performance than UK farmers are demanded to. So like if you're an upland sheep farmer, like maybe the guys you were visiting in Northumbria, Eleanor, because that's a good chance that they were doing sheep, they're going to get outcompeted by people that don't live according to the same standards.
I mean, I find also just, side note, other than how depressing it is, and there are certain things that are involved in this as well. So, for example, Australia allows live export of sheep, which is, really considered inhumane by a lot of places. We aren't allowed to do that. There are all sorts of things along with it. But there's also just a historical thing about this that makes me really sad from a shepherding standpoint, because the only reason, this godforsaken island was not important during the medieval period. Let me be clear. It never was. It was never important. But it
was extremely important to people alive today.
Yeah. But one of the things that it did have going for it, and one of the only things it had going for it, was that it was an excellent wool production place. And we grew real good sheep. And that's why London became large, is that it was basically a wool export center. And wool is this, important miracle fiber that stays warm even when it's wet, and medieval Europe really ran on it. And it sucks so much because I just like that. I like that it's this one little thing that is still going from the time. And I don't think people really understand how this is going to completely decimate them. And it simply is. It is,
Yeah, and among the other things that it could very well fuck over is if you can imagine it, it won't take much more for another whole bunch of small farmers to go out of business, and then for much larger farms to take over and conglomerate. And one of the things that I still find genuinely beautiful every time I'm there is the UK countryside, because the plots of land, Eleanor, you'll know this better than us. They're all quite small and they're in little bits, but they have all the hedgerows and the stone walls and all that stuff. It's very beautiful to look at, and it comes from this. We've never really consolidated to a huge extent farming in the UK, certainly not the land. But if that happens, the whole look and feel of the English countryside, it only takes, 5 or 10 years with a chainsaw and a big bulldozer to make it essentially one giant wheat field or a big sheep pasture,
Yeah, exactly. So, it's really sad because the thing that we think of as kind of quintessential British countryside is that patchwork, all of these tiny little family farms. And this is going to turn us into, ranch land. It'll be in Australia, there are cattle farms that are larger than the state of Texas that are owned by one family, and that's what we'll be looking at and competing with,
Yeah, because as I said before, the UK government will expect farms to no longer be fucking moochers relying on government subsidies. They're supposed to be independent actors who only get some money if they do environmental performance. But what if, and here's just a what if for you, it's much more advantageous for you to dig up everything environmental and plant every last inch of your farm with more wheat so you can produce more for the market and compete in the rat race. That's just a what if for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, if I was the government, I wouldn't really be pissing off the only group of people who are basically certain to have shotguns.
Another pleasant thing that's happening in the meantime is what they're doing this is called delinking, because it used to be you would have to be an actual...
I think it's called delinker.
Yeah, I was about to say.
No, it's in the old system, in the European system, you would have to be an active farmer. There were certain definitions, you would have to be actually engaged in farming as your main activity in order to be able to receive subsidies, which makes sense.
You couldn't have a Sunday job on the side or something.
You couldn't be a passive farmer where you just sort of stand around and let turnips fall into your lap.
Well, you could be a passive farmer in the sense that you could be the landowner and have other people farm for you, lease out the land, and still catch the subsidies. That's definitely.
Sorry, that sounds like job creation. I don't think you should be. I don't think you should be dissing those people by accusing them of passive farming, mate. What if they went abroad and took all the land with them? Well, then where would we be?
But what they're doing in this new scheme is they're breaking that link between having to be an actual active farmer and being able to receive subsidies. So now it means that if you are Prestwick Airport, say, David, or a local council, you could apply and get money from the same pot that the same smaller pot that farmers are going to get paid out of for environmental performance. So there's going to be more claimants on probably a much smaller pool of money. And in that, you could, you could include everybody, including like shit like grouse farming, grouse moor maintenance, that kind of shit. So another thing that could very well happen is like, because now there's more money in environmental performance, is like James Dyson could buy up a whole bunch of farmland, turn it into a big nature reserve, get a whole bunch more money out of that, but not produce more food, essentially making the UK more reliable on exports from third countries like Australia or New Zealand with lower environmental welfare standards, while the money he makes gets sucked off seas to Singapore, where his company headquarters now is.
How do you suck off money anyway?
If there's any man to ask, it's James Dyson.
And the other thing that I think will probably happen is, because, as I said, DEFRA is run by a bunch of incompetents and the experience level is really low. We've talked about it in different fields, but it's going to come back, is there's going to be more scams. The particular one that I'm thinking about is stuff like carbon farming, where you're supposed to be paying farmers to do certain stuff to keep carbon in the soil, but it's incredibly difficult. It's a whole side topic, but like, suffice to say, it's incredibly difficult to say whether or not anything a farmer is doing is actually keeping carbon in the soil, or we're just doing numbers fuckstein to make carbon credits to sell
What if they
to...
just dump a load of coal in the soil? Isn't that like keeping carbon
Yeah,
there?
that's how you do it.
Yeah. What if we just backfill all the coal mines with all the coal we dug out of it?
And then you dig it all up again, and then you got to make sure that it's actually still coal, so you can measure how much carbon was down there, and then it's a problem that solved itself, I assume.
Yeah. And then we can turn whatever's left into like a carbon capture and storage site. Another thing that really works and is a thing. Unless, of course, we end up opening that new coal mine in Cumbria that we mentioned on a couple of previous podcasts, which is, I still think it's possible. So essentially, what I think, if you look at all this and like what's going to happen in the next couple of years, and I try not to do predictions because I think every prediction I've ever made on the podcast has come to naught, but I'm just like if you look ahead, like...
We can't all be winners, Rob.
I mean, if you look at like how fragile the UK supply chains are, right, and the difficulties we already have with supplying supermarkets right now, what if like we took a whole bunch more farmers out of the land and made everything else more precarious, more dependent on contract labor, underpaid farm labor, all that stuff? What if we just did that? Because a couple people would do very, very well out of it. I'm just thinking that certainly under this government is very well possible, because nobody's, apart from, again, like 100 to 150,000 farmers, there's not that many people left that are actually doing this job, and they don't have enough of a voice to like register their concerns properly, because they're outcompeted by larger interests. So I think probably like what you're going to see is even more people draining out of the countryside and into the cities, into SMERT apartments, a large increase in scale, and like a couple of like smaller farms, but they only make incredibly expensive finished products like cheeses or local hams, like shit, the Cotswolds guy would sell you. The
in-betweener farm.
Yeah.
Artisanal light bulbs.
Farmers will be fine. Listen, they've got until 2028. Between now and then, that's more than 5 years for them to develop a plan and collectivise. Dead simple. Just press the Stalinism button. It'll be fine.
Yeah, nothing went wrong there. And Eleanor, I mean, you know this much better than I do. Historically, the countryside is already much an emptier place than it was before.
Oh,
like
yes.
it just keeps draining.
Absolutely.
And like I think it's just going to keep on happening. And my question is like, what happens to pretty much any rural community that's not within like an hour's commute of, say, London or Manchester? Like,
I mean, it's just so hard to say, right? Because, even now, like, one of my good friends grew up in kind of rural Norfolk. And he said, he was the only kid in his village. And that was in the 90s, and it's just got worse and worse. And, now when you go to Norfolk, for example, most of the towns and things, especially along the coast, they're just for holiday makers. The actual cottages and things are empty unless somebody's on holiday. And so we don't have a real good answer for this because really, the great history of the world writ large is a history of, first hunter-gathering and then agrarianism. We've only really become an urban species overall just recently, a few years back.
Excuse me, I think you're also forgetting class struggle.
That's
Thank
right,
you very
that's
much.
right. But what about, hey, what about primitive communism, quote unquote? Anyway, not get me started. If you want me to...
Have you thought about becoming an anarcho-capitalist?
I know the most ridiculous group of humans on the entire planet. I love this. So yeah, it's a really depressing one because just as a species, we don't even really know how to deal with this. We have never been overall a more urban species until now, and so what the hell is going to happen? And I don't think that anyone is really thinking long term about what this could possibly mean.
I don't think anyone's thinking long term about fucking anything these days.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's basically just like
I imagine the solution to the problem Rob describes, where like every town and village that isn't within an hour's commute of London is empty, is to just improve, not improve, but spend more money on transport boondoggles so that the entire country is within an hour's commute of London. You know what I mean? Like people in Scotland being fired by railgun to get to the metropolis for work every morning. Yeah.
We really need to build on this railgun network that we've posited. I think this is probably the fourth time that we brought this up.
We could get that missile off the Chinese, the one that goes apparently really fast or some shit.
Just get the spinny thing that yeets you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
More jobs for stout lads. You know what I mean?
It's Mass Effect, but as a countryside, it's going to be really good. But yeah, I'll just read you a quote from the FT again. This is Professor Michael Winter at Exeter University. When all the farms in the village are farmed by some big farm 10 or 15 miles away, they're not really invested in a place in a community. They don't get the snow plows out to clear the lanes when it snows, or let their fields for the village festival. All you see is massive machines going up and down the road. Farmers can be some of the few people who live and work in a place as opposed to living there and working elsewhere. And I think, I don't know what the answer to this is. I don't know. Is it good to pay people to have small, inefficient farms that aren't really doing anything good for the environment?
Have we considered just paving everything?
Yeah, right. I think that Joni...
you need to Factorio this shit. That's what we need to do.
I think Joni Mitchell may have had a song about this.
and part of what worries me about this is if you remember that I don't know if he still does it, but Prince Charles had one of these two agricultural villages where it was small farming and it was all kind of cutesy. Does this ring any bells, or is it just me who remembers this
Are you
stuff?
describing Prince Charles' personal Potemkin village?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Have you ever been through it? It's fucking wild.
Fucking rich people, man.
Yeah.
It rings a vague bell, but all I really want to say is I hope they don't let Prince Andrew have his own fucking village.
That's just called a nursery. Anyway.
I was going to say petting zoo, but it's along the same lines.
A heavy petting zoo.
Shout out to NoFX. One of the premier NoFX albums, obviously.
We're doing so well.
And I mean, obviously, if there's anything good that maybe could come out of the whole Corona thing and the working from home thing, is that you could maybe theoretically see a sort of spread out of London away from the smart apartments and into these villages that are empty, so you could sort of reboost village life and make these places livable, which would hopefully attract a new generation of farmers to come in there and do the job as well.
As someone who lives in a village, I can't wait until I get fucking gentrified to shit and back, just for people to e-commute to fucking like London for the finance industry or some shit.
Yeah.
It's going to be great, you know what I mean? I'll just go and live in the fucking woods, will I?
No, it's fine. At that point, your global communication certificate will finally be worth something.
Just sneaking from farm to farm to like fucking like what's the fucking fucking hell, I can't think of the term. Jailbreak the tractors. There we go.
I mean, I don't know, Eleanor. I think always like the fall of the Roman Empire is like overdetermined and overused as an example, but like you do see some of these things where like it's this huge concentration of urban living and like an emptying of the countryside replaced by latifundia, big estates, and semi-slave labor.
Rob, no, I'm sorry, I don't see what uncontrolled immigration has to do with any of this.
I thought, God damn.
I thought like there's some guys on YouTube who told me that the fall of the Roman Empire was because women.
Yeah.
So
I'm always surprised to learn when people think when the Roman Empire fell and how, considering that it happened, with the fall of Constantinople. But extremely go off, kings. Love that. Love that for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. Like, I don't want to go down that particular route, but I do find, there's so these echoes that are in the same line, and I don't want to say that it will happen the same way because it won't, because history doesn't repeat itself. But
no,
I do think that like we have to have like a sort of fairly serious conversation about how this will work, and like unless we give most of the countryside over to like the National Trust, if you think that's a good organization to like do environmental stuff with it, like we still have to make food somewhere, and in the age of climate breakdown where we are now, I think that might be a bit more critical than we just give it credence for now. And like, I mean, I don't know where this goes because it's too important, too critical. Well, I mean, I say for it not to go to ruin, but then I remember this is Britain, so it very well might.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for any of this, but obviously I don't.
I do.
Shit's fucked.
And it starts with a G and ends with a teen. But,
yeah. As long as people have necks.
I mean, we haven't even talked about like Britain's weird land ownership relations and like the holdovers from the medieval period, and the fact that like the Duke of Norfolk owns half the fucking countryside, or the it's in Scotland, David. I know it's even fucking more bizarre.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Also, by the way, all of this stuff that we've been talking about specifically relates to England, because Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland are now responsible for their own farming systems, so they will have separate farm systems and farm support systems to England, even though it's the same country, and I don't know how that's going to work.
Really, really badly, because if they try and do anything akin to what we have now, that money's not going to be there, because the money's all represented through the Barnett formula, and because it's such a small pool of money that England's going to have for their farms, that'll be translated through to a tiny pool of money for each of the other three countries. Yay!
I wonder if there'll be any knock-on effects if, like, farming in Northern Ireland and Wales and Scotland all fall over. I wonder if that'll have any ramifications. I'm sure someone will deal with that.
No, we will just eat whatever fucking imported slop we're given, and we'll be thankful for it.
We'll all have those wonderful pink sausages from that the DUP guy was holding.
Yeah.
We'll always have those.
Delicious.
Just refusing to eat anything at all unless it's going to give us a proper disease like BSE.
Back in my day, it was good enough for my father, these kids today, etc., etc.
So, I mean, this is sort of all I have on this topic, because I wish I had like a better conclusion for it, but it's just this, to me, I think this is a really interesting process that's ongoing now and nobody's paying attention. I mean, the farmers' unions are, and I don't know, Defra's somewhere dancing around with clown makeup on, but I don't know anybody else like who's interested in this, and I think it's just kind of worthwhile to keep an eye on, because I don't think it's going to good places.
Since you brought DEFRA up again, could we possibly expand their remit so that they could go around taking a bolt gun to NFT monkeys?
I think so. Yeah, I think animal welfare standards should include NFTs.
Defra has brought a report where they've identified a new food source for the starving Britain that we find ourselves in today.
It's NFT owners.
Yeah, crypto guys.
All right, I don't know. Does anybody have any other final thoughts or anything, or shall we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I think
this has been sufficiently depressing. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, Eleanor. I really was trying to have.
Yeah,
something...
sorry, Eleanor. That's exactly what we aim for.
I mean, I absolutely love it. I dig peasant chat. I want to talk about the sheepies. I love a fucking dry stone wall. Me. It's just a shame that apparently nobody else does. But hey ho.
Yeah, if you like your dry stone wall, you can keep it.
Yeah. It's alright, soon you can live inside one.
Part of one, David, please.
Yeah, part of one, yeah, fair enough. Okay, right, we'll wrap it up here. I mean,
you could live inside it. Once landlords figure out that 37 square feet, or square meters or whatever the fuck it was, can just be a line. You know what I mean?
Landlords want you to live in one dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap it up. We'll be back next week with another episode, another free one, and we should have another bonus episode out towards the end of the month, so look forward to that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/praxiscast. Check out the Twitch streams on
Mondays and
Thursdays, and they are going fucking gangbusters, really. Yeah, we're so good at the fucking Viking
Hell
game.
Yeah.
It's not even funny.
Nice.
How inept we aren't.
Look, all I'm saying is, if a real farmer had to deal with the problems that we did, like pigs that could just phase through walls, then they would understand how hard it is to stream.
That was honestly the least of our fucking problems, though, wasn't it? When we sailed all the way to that swamp and immediately died, and then had to walk all the way back because the boat obviously
that happens to so many farmers every year. It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
So you can check that out on twitch.tv/praxiscast. And Eleanor, thank you very much for coming back on. It's been a pleasure.
An absolute
And also,
delight.
Eleanor, do you want to plug your many-fold things?
I can plug some things. Yo, could you buy my comic book? It's called...
it's real good.
It's real good. It's got good pictures. It's called The Middle Ages, A Graphic History, and it'll get you up to speed with medieval history stuff more generally. Otherwise, obviously, I'm on Twitter being an idiot at Going Medieval. My blog is going-medieval.com, and you can support it at Patreon.com/Going Medieval.
Yeah. And you can listen to We're Not So Different,
Oh
which
yeah,
is also a good
my
podcast.
podcast is We're Not So Different. I'm so tired, y'all. I have too many things. My podcast, We're Not So Different, you can find on all good podcast forums. And you can also find us on Twitter at WNSDpod.
Cool.
There you go.
I can do
plugs. Go away and do your homework, dear listener.
I can do this. I'm learning. It's good.
I'm learning.
Jamie, did you learn anything today?
Do I learn anything any day?
Well, I mean, that's another thing that we aim for Jamie never to learn anything.
What I am learning right now is that it's time to stop the episode. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.